The early morning sun cast long shadows across West Point's historic grounds as Ambassador Kithrick stepped out of the sleek Federation spacecraft. His crystalline scales shimmered in Earth's harsh sunlight as he adjusted his atmospheric regulator. Behind him, 5 other Federation representatives emerged, each from different species that comprised the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. "Quite primitive," remarked General Zixtal of the Meridian Empire, her tentacle appendages waving dismissively at the stone buildings. They still used physical materials for their structures instead of energy matrices. Kithrick's secondary eyes tracked the movement of a formation of human cadets running along a path, while his primary eyes focused on the welcoming committee approaching them. The humans moved with a synchronized precision that seemed unusually disciplined for what the Federation classified as an emerging species. Colonel Sarah Chen strode forward, her uniform crisp and bearing impeccable. "Ambassador Kithrick, welcome to the United States Military Academy at West Point. We're honored to host the Federation delegation." Her universal translator conveyed both her words and the respectful tone behind them. The ambassador dipped his head in the traditional Federation greeting. "Colonel Chen, we appreciate your willingness to allow this inspection. The Federation Council requires thorough evaluation of all military training facilities before considering Earth's application for full membership." As they began their walk toward the main campus, a strange sound caught the attention of Dr. Venre, the Federation's chief expert in military education. Her sensor stalks extended fully as she identified the source: human cadets calling out in rhythm as they exercised. "Fascinating," she murmured, recording the scene with her neural implant. "They use vocal synchronization during physical activities. Most inefficient, yet." She paused as she noticed the perfect timing of their movements. Colonel Chen smiled. "We find that cadence calls help build unit cohesion and maintain morale during physical training. Would you like to observe more closely?" The delegation moved toward the training group, where 4th-class cadets were completing their morning routine. Sweat gleamed on their faces as they performed what their instructor called mountain climbers in Earth's full gravity. They trained without gravitational adjustment. Commander Pex of the Arcturus Defense Force asked, his exoskeleton clicking in surprise. "Even our most elite warriors use gravity modulators during training." "We believe in training under natural conditions," Colonel Chen explained. "It builds genuine strength and endurance that can't be replicated with technological assistance." Kithrick noticed something peculiar about the training group. Some cadets were clearly struggling more than others, their movements slower, their breathing more labored. Yet they continued, encouraged by their peers and instructor. In Federation training facilities, such performers would have been immediately removed from the group to maintain optimal efficiency. "Colonel," Kithrick began, gesturing toward the group with a scaled hand, "I observe varying levels of physical capability among your cadets. Why do you not separate them by performance metrics?" "The strong become stronger by helping their teammates," Colonel Chen replied. "And those who struggle learn to push beyond their perceived limits. We're not just building individual soldiers, Ambassador. We're forging a unified team." The concept seemed counterintuitive to everything the Federation believed about military training, yet Kithrick couldn't deny the evident bonds forming among the cadets. His report notes began to fill with observations that defied his preliminary expectations. As they continued their tour, the morning sun climbing higher over the Hudson River, Kithrick realized this inspection might reveal more about humanity than the Federation had anticipated. These humans, with their stone buildings and natural gravity training, were already challenging his preconceptions. And they had only just begun. Dark clouds gathered over West Point as Colonel Chen led the Federation delegation toward the obstacle course. The first drops of rain began to fall, causing General Zixtal to extend her personal force field. "Perhaps we should delay until more favorable conditions," the general suggested, her tentacles curling in discomfort at the precipitation. Colonel Chen checked her watch and shook her head. "The cadets train in all weather conditions, Ambassador. In fact, they consider adverse weather an additional training opportunity." As if on cue, A group of 30 cadets emerged from the nearby barracks, their boots striking the ground in perfect unison despite the increasingly slick terrain. No force fields protected them from the elements. They wore standard physical training uniforms, now darkening with rain. Dr. Venra's sensor stalks wavered in disbelief. Surely this violates safety protocols. The reduced visibility and unstable surface conditions must increase injury probability by at least 47%. Life rarely gives us perfect conditions. A new voice interrupted. Captain Marcus Rodriguez, the obstacle course instructor, approached the group. We train our cadets to adapt and overcome, not to wait for ideal circumstances. The delegation watched as the cadets began their approach to the obstacle course. Kithrix noted how they divided into smaller teams without explicit instruction, each group studying the challenges ahead while the rain intensified. First time on this course, Captain Rodriguez explained. We change the configuration weekly. They'll need to figure it out as they go. Commander Pex's exoskeleton whirred as he processed this information. You mean they have no pre-programmed solution paths? No neural simulations to prepare them? That would defeat the purpose, Colonel Chen replied. We want them to think on their feet. The first team approached the 30-foot wall slick with rain. A female cadet, smaller than her teammates, took the lead. She slipped on her first attempt to scale the wall, landing hard in the mud. Kithrix expected her to be replaced immediately, as would happen in Federation training. Instead, she rose quickly, wiping mud from her face. New approach, team, she called out. Davies, Harrison, make a ladder formation. We'll get everyone over, then use the rope for the last person. Her teammates immediately moved to execute her plan, their bodies forming a human ladder against the wall. Kithrix's secondary eyes widened as he observed the efficiency of their improvised solution. Remarkable, Dr. Venra muttered, her neural implant recording frantically. They're adapting their biological limitations through spontaneous cooperation. As the morning progressed, the delegation observed more examples of this unusual human approach. When one cadet struggled with a rope swing across a mud pit, his teammates called out encouragement and advice rather than leaving him behind. When another team encountered a particularly challenging obstacle, they quickly shared their successful strategy with the following group. This makes no logical sense, General Zixtal commented as they watched a team help an exhausted cadet through the final stretch. In competitive training, why would they assist potential rivals? Because they understand that in real combat, you're only as strong as your weakest link, Captain Rodriguez answered. We're not training them to compete against each other. We're training them to face whatever challenges come their way, together. The rain continued to fall, but Kithrix barely noticed it now. His attention was fixed on the scene before him. Mud-covered cadets crossing the finish line as teams, every member accounted for, their faces showing exhaustion, but also unmistakable pride and unity. Colonel Chen smiled at the ambassador's evident fascination. This is just the beginning of their day, Ambassador. Shall we proceed to their tactical training sessions? Thrix nodded, his data tablet already filled with observations that would puzzle his superiors back at Federation headquarters. These humans were proving to be far more intriguing than anyone had anticipated. The Federation delegation entered Thayer Hall, their footsteps echoing off the polished floors. The aliens' confusion was evident as Colonel Chen led them into what appeared to be a standard classroom. After witnessing the intensity of the morning's physical training, this academic setting seemed oddly peaceful. I don't understand, Commander Peck stated, his exoskeleton adjusting to the change in environment. Why are warriors sitting at desks? Surely combat simulations would be more valuable than this primitive arrangement. A young professor in uniform turned from the holographic display at the front of the room. Today's discussion focuses on the Battle of Thermopylae and its modern implications for asymmetric warfare. Professor Diana Williams explained. Cadets, please welcome our Federation observers. 30 cadets rose in unison, still bearing traces of mud from their morning exercises. Kithrix noticed that despite their earlier physical exertion, Each cadet had a tablet ready and appeared alert for the academic session. Now, Professor Williams continued, "Cadet Chen, your analysis of Cain Leonidas's tactical decisions." A cadet stood, her posture impeccable. "The key wasn't just the geographical advantage, ma'am. It was understanding how to use limited resources against a technologically superior force. Leonidas chose the battlefield that negated most of Xerxes's advantages." Dr. Venra's sensor stalks twitched with interest. "They study battles from their pre-spaceflight era. What possible relevance could such primitive conflicts have? The principles of strategy transcend technology," Professor Williams responded. "Cadet Martinez, your thoughts on modern applications?" Another cadet rose. "The recent Proxima Centauri trade route dispute demonstrates similar principles. Earth's ships were outgunned, but by using the system's dense asteroid field, our patrol boats could effectively counter pirate raids despite their superior weaponry." Thrix's secondary eyes blinked rapidly as he made the connection. His own military education had focused solely on modern tactics and technology. Yet these humans were drawing insights from their entire history. The class shifted to a debate about ethical decision-making in combat scenarios. The Federation observers watched in fascination as cadets argued passionately about the balance between military necessity and civilian protection. "You're teaching them to question orders?" General Zixtal asked, her tentacles writhing in disapproval. "In the Federation, military units are programmed with clear hierarchical protocols. We're teaching them to think critically," Colonel Chen corrected. "A leader who understands why will make better decisions than one who simply follows protocols." The discussion moved to a scenario involving first contact with a potentially hostile alien civilization. Thrix found himself leaning forward as the cadets proposed various approaches, combining military readiness with diplomatic initiatives. "Remarkable," Dr. Venra murmured, recording furiously. "They're simultaneously considering tactical, ethical, and diplomatic angles. Most Federation species specialize in just one approach." Near the end of the class, Professor Williams presented a complex tactical puzzle. Instead of reaching for computational aids, the cadets broke into small groups, their animated discussions filling the room with energy. "They seem to enjoy this mental challenge as much as their physical training," Thrix observed. "The mind is as crucial as the body in warfare," Colonel Chen replied. "Perhaps even more so. We're not just training soldiers to fight. We're preparing leaders to make difficult decisions in complex situations." As they left the classroom, Thrix noticed several cadets had remained behind, deeply engaged in debate about the tactical puzzle. His report notes now included an observation that would surprise the Federation Council. Humans didn't see military education as simply learning to fight. They saw it as learning to think. The afternoon sun penetrated the clouds as Colonel Chen guided the Federation delegation toward a nondescript building near the edge of campus. Inside, a large situation room hummed with activity. Multiple screens displayed various terrain maps, while cadets huddled around communication equipment. "This is our Advanced Tactical Response Center," Colonel Chen explained. "Today's exercise simulates a complex rescue operation in hostile territory." Major Sarah Wilson, the exercise coordinator, approached with a tablet. "We're about to begin, Colonel. Our cadets have just received their mission parameters." She turned to address the delegation. "You're welcome to observe from our monitoring station." Commander Pax scanned the room with his tactical sensors. "Your simulation equipment appears quite basic compared to Federation standards. How can they learn properly without neural interfaces and full sensory immersion?" Before Colonel Chen could respond, alarms blared through the room. Major Wilson's tablet lit up with incoming data. "Attention, cadets. We've lost contact with our forward teams. Primary communication systems are down, and backup channels are compromised." Thrix watched as the cadets' expressions shifted from surprise to focused determination. This hadn't been part of their briefing. How will they complete the mission without proper communication protocols? General Zixtal asked, her tentacles twitching nervously. "In Federation training, We would pause the simulation to restore optimal conditions. Watch, Colonel Chen replied simply. The cadets quickly reorganized themselves. A tall cadet with lieutenant bars took charge of her team. Rogers, what alternative communications do we have available? Ma'am, we've got some old radio equipment in storage, and I can probably rig up a simple encryption using frequency hopping, Rogers responded, already moving toward the supply room. Another cadet spoke up. We can use the civilian satellite network as a backup. It's not secure, but if we fragment our messages and use the old alphanumeric code system, Dr. Venra's sensor stalks extended in surprise. They're creating solutions with outdated technology. This defies all standard military protocols. The room buzzed with activity as cadets implemented their improvised solutions. Kathrix noted how they seamlessly combined different approaches. Some worked on the technical problems while others adapted their tactical plans to account for the communication challenges. Lieutenant Chen, Major Wilson called out, "Your forward team has encountered unexpected civilian populations in the target area. How do you proceed?" The cadet lieutenant didn't hesitate. Shift to humanitarian protocols. Jackson, coordinate with local civilian authorities using our emergency radio network. Martinez, recalculate our approach to minimize civilian exposure. But the mission parameters, General Zixtel began, have changed, Colonel Chen finished. And so our cadets adapt. In real combat situations, things rarely go according to plan. As the exercise progressed, more challenges emerged. Equipment malfunctions, weather changes, and unexpected enemy movements forced the cadets to constantly revise their strategies. Instead of becoming frustrated, they seemed to grow more focused and creative with each new obstacle. They're actually enjoying this chaos, Kathrix observed, his secondary eyes tracking multiple teams at once. Humans tend to perform best when challenged, Colonel Chen replied. We found that experiencing and overcoming difficulties in training builds confidence for real-world situations. The exercise concluded with the cadets achieving their primary objective, though not in the way anyone had initially planned. As Major Wilson led the debriefing, Kathrix noticed how the cadets immediately began analyzing their performance, suggesting improvements and sharing insights. In Federation training, Commander Pex noted, "We aim for perfect execution of predetermined protocols. This approach seems messy, unpredictable." Colonel Chen suggested, "Effective." Commander Pex finished, his exoskeleton wearing thoughtfully. Twilight settled over West Point as the Federation delegation gathered at the edge of a densely wooded training area. The evening air carried a slight chill, causing General Zixtel's environmental suit to adjust automatically. Stars began to appear in the darkening sky, their familiar patterns providing the only similarity to the alien observers' homeworlds. "A night exercise?" Kathrix inquired, his scales shifting to a darker shade to match the growing darkness. "Surely your cadets require rest after today's activities." Colonel Chen checked her watch. Actually, they'd been looking forward to this. Tonight's exercise combines navigation, stealth, and tactical decision-making. Captain Torres, would you explain the parameters? A stern-faced officer stepped forward, holding several paper maps. Each team must navigate to 5 checkpoints using only basic tools. No powered equipment, no digital aids, no night vision devices. Dr. Venra's sensor stalks drooped in disbelief. You deliberately deprive them of technological advantages. This seems counterproductive. We call it going back to basics. Captain Torres responded, watching as teams of cadets gathered their minimal equipment. When technology fails, our officers need to rely on fundamental skills. The aliens observed as instructors distributed compasses, paper maps, and small red lens flashlights to each team. Commander Pex's tactical sensors whirred as he analyzed the simple tools. These devices are centuries obsolete, he noted. Even the most primitive Federation species abandoned such methods generations ago. A cadet team passed nearby, their leader studying the paper map by red flashlight. "Remember," she whispered to her team, We can use the North Star to verify our compass readings. The terrain will be different from daytime navigation. Kithrix's secondary eyes tracked their movement as they disappeared into the darkness. They navigate by stellar observation. Like ancient seafarers. Sometimes the old ways are the most reliable, Colonel Chen replied. Stellar navigation doesn't require power, can't be jammed, and works anywhere you can see the sky. As the exercise progressed, the delegation followed Captain Torres through the training area. They observed teams using different techniques, some calculating positions based on terrain features, others timing their pace counts to estimate distances. Look there, Dr. Venra pointed with a sensor stock. A team had encountered a steep ravine that wasn't marked on their map. Instead of retreating, the cadets huddled together, whispering as they assessed their options. Their leader pulled out a small notebook and began sketching the obstacle. They're updating their maps, Kithrix realized, creating new knowledge from direct observation. Information gathering and sharing, Colonel Chen confirmed. Each team that completes the course adds to our understanding of the terrain. Their notes will help improve our maps for future exercises. A light rain began to fall, making navigation even more challenging. The aliens watched in amazement as the cadets continued undeterred, protecting their maps and adjusting their techniques for the wet conditions. In Federation training, General Zixtal observed, her tentacles curling thoughtfully, we would consider these conditions too adverse for effective learning. Adversity is one of our best teachers, Captain Torres responded. Each challenge they overcome builds confidence and capability. As midnight approached, teams began arriving at the final checkpoint. Despite their exhaustion, the cadets immediately began sharing information about the route, marking hazards on their maps, and discussing alternative approaches they'd discovered. They're not just completing the exercise, Kithrix noted, his scales shimming with revelation. They're building a knowledge base for future cadets. That's the heart of human military tradition, Colonel Chen said quietly. Each generation learns from and builds upon the experience of those who came before, while adding their own discoveries to the foundation. The morning sun illuminated the simulation chamber as Colonel Chen led the Federation delegation into a vast room filled with holographic displays. Unlike the previous day's exercises, today's challenge would test the cadets' ability to work across cultural and tactical boundaries. Today's scenario involves coordinating a multi-planetary relief effort, Major Lisa Wong explained, gesturing to the detailed stellar maps floating above their heads. Each cadet brings unique perspectives from their various backgrounds. Kithrix observed the assembled teams with his secondary eyes. He noticed how the cadets represented different regions of Earth, their variations in appearance and manner more pronounced than he had initially realized. You don't segregate your training units by regional origin, General Zixtal asked, her tentacles weaving in confusion. The Federation found that homogeneous units perform with greater efficiency. Before Colonel Chen could respond, the simulation began. A complex humanitarian crisis unfolded across 3 star systems, requiring immediate response from the cadet teams. A cadet from Kenya stepped forward, her voice clear and confident. The drought patterns here mirror those in East Africa. We can adapt traditional water management techniques to this alien environment. Agreed, added another cadet with distinctly Asian features. If we combine that with the terrace farming methods from Nepal, we could help the local population become self-sufficient within one growing season. Dr. Venra's sensor stalks trembled with excitement. They're applying solutions from different Earth regions to extraterrestrial problems. Fascinating. The simulation intensified as new complications arose. A solar storm threatened to disrupt relief efforts, forcing the cadets to revise their strategy. Kithrix watched in amazement as they seamlessly reorganize, each team member contributing insights from their unique backgrounds. In my hometown in Brazil, we developed emergency communication systems for the Amazon rainforest, one cadet explained, sketching a diagram. We can modify those methods to work through the solar interference. Commander Pex's exoskeleton whirred as he processed this information. Their differences don't create friction. In Federation units, cultural variations often lead to operational delays. Quite the opposite, Colonel Chen replied. Watch how they solve the next challenge. A holographic alert indicated that local customs on one planet prevented male relief workers from interacting with female civilians. Without hesitation, the teams reorganized, with female cadets taking lead positions in those areas, while their male counterparts provided logistical support. They adapt their roles based on cultural requirements, Kithrix noted, his scales shifting to a thoughtful blue hue. No protocols needed to be consulted. As the exercise concluded, the delegation watched the debriefing session. Cadets shared insights from their various cultural backgrounds, each contribution building upon the others to create comprehensive solutions. This is why we embrace diversity, Colonel Chen explained. In a galaxy full of different species and cultures, we need leaders who understand that variations in perspective are strengths, not weaknesses. The aliens exchanged glances as they realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in Federation military training, a system that didn't just tolerate differences, but actively sought them out as assets. The afternoon session brought the Federation delegation to a unique facility that combined virtual reality chambers with traditional meeting rooms. Colonel Chen gestured toward a group of cadets preparing for their next exercise. This is where we test their ability to handle complex diplomatic and combat situations simultaneously, she explained. Today's scenario involves a first contact situation that could turn hostile. Dr. Venra's sensor stalks twitched with interest. Surely these are separate training tracks. In the Federation, diplomatic corps and combat units never overlap. Major James Anderson, the lead instructor, stepped forward. Cadet Thompson, your team is up first. Remember, your primary objective is peaceful contact, but be prepared for all contingencies. The delegation watched as Thompson's team entered the simulation chamber. The scenario began with their ship approaching an unknown alien vessel near a contested border region. Initial scans show their weapons are powered but not targeted, reported one cadet. Their communication channels are open, but they're using an unknown protocol. Kithrix observed with his secondary eyes as Thompson made her first decision. Instead of preparing combat systems, she ordered her team to transmit peaceful intentions using multiple formats, including mathematical sequences and simple visual patterns. Fascinating approach, Commander Pex noted, his exoskeleton humming. They attempt communication even while at tactical disadvantage. The simulation escalated as the alien vessel showed signs of both curiosity and aggression. Thompson's team maintained their diplomatic stance while subtly maneuvering into a defensive position. Look at their formation, General Zixtal observed, her tentacles rippling. They're ready for both peaceful exchange and immediate combat. The scenario took an unexpected turn when the alien vessel suddenly launched small probes. Thompson had seconds to decide between treating them as weapons or scientific instruments. Hold fire, she commanded. Match their speed but don't intercept. Show them we're studying the probes just as they're studying us. Colonel Chen smiled at the alien's surprise reactions. Notice how she turned a potentially hostile action into a shared scientific endeavor. The exercise continued through several more phases, each testing the cadets' ability to balance diplomatic and tactical considerations. When communication was finally established, Thompson's team demonstrated equal skill in cultural exchange and security protocols. In most Federation armies, warriors would never be trusted with diplomatic responsibilities. Kithrix noted, his scales shifting to a contemplative shade. Yet in space, every military commander is potentially a first contact specialist, Colonel Chen responded. We can't afford to separate these skills. The simulation concluded with a successful peaceful exchange, but Major Anderson wasn't finished. He immediately launched a variant scenario where diplomacy failed. The delegation watched as Thompson's team smoothly transitioned from diplomatic engagement to combat operations, all while maintaining the possibility of returning to negotiations. They never fully abandoned the diplomatic option, Dr. Venray observed, recording intensively. Even during active combat, they leave room for peace. Because the goal isn't combat itself, Colonel Chen explained. It's achieving lasting stability. Sometimes that requires force, sometimes diplomacy, usually both. Our officers must master the entire spectrum. As the cadets exited the simulation chamber, they immediately began analyzing their performance, discussing alternative approaches and learning from each other's insights. They seemed to understand that every encounter, peaceful or hostile, is a learning opportunity, Kithrix remarked, watching the animated discussion. That's what makes them unique, Colonel Chen replied. They don't just train for war or peace, they train to handle the complex reality that lies between. The Federation delegation gathered in West Point's historic Jefferson Hall for their final evaluation. Through the tall windows, they could see cadets going about their morning routine, the familiar sight now carrying new meaning after their week of observations. Ambassador Kithrix stood before the assembled Academy leadership, his scales shifting through thoughtful shades of blue and gold. Behind him, the other Federation representatives organized their findings on crystalline displays. When we arrived, Kithrix began, his translator conveying both his words and the emotion behind them. We expected to find a primitive training facility struggling to meet Federation standards. We were prepared to recommend extensive modernization before considering Earth's application. Colonel Chen sat quietly, her expression neutral but attentive. The room fell silent as Kithrix's secondary eyes focused on the assembled human officers. Instead, we found something unprecedented in our combined experience. He gestured to Dr. Venra, who projected a holographic summary of their observations. Your cadets train not just their bodies, but their minds and spirits. They embrace challenges that our own training programs deliberately avoid. General Zixtel's tentacles moved in the formal pattern of respectful acknowledgement. You turned disadvantages into learning opportunities. When we saw your cadets training in Earth's gravity without technological assistance, we thought it primitive. Now we understand it builds both physical and mental resilience. Commander Peck stepped forward, his exoskeleton adjusted to a formal stance. Your emphasis on adaptation and creative problem-solving exceeds anything in our standardized protocols. We watched your cadets turn tactical disadvantages into strategic victories through sheer ingenuity. Most surprisingly, Dr. Venray added, her sensor stalks extended in academic excitement. You've created a system that turns diversity into strength. Federation training seeks to eliminate variables. You embrace them. Kithrix raised his scaled hand, displaying the official Federation evaluation crystal. Therefore, our recommendation to the Federation Council will be unprecedented. We are not only endorsing Earth's military training as adequate for membership, we are recommending that several Federation species be permitted to send their own cadets to train here. The human officers maintained their professional composure, but Kithrix's secondary eyes detected subtle signs of pride in their bearing. Furthermore, he continued, we recommend establishing the Joint Training Initiative. The Federation has much to learn from Earth's approach to military education, particularly your methods of developing officers who can think independently while maintaining unit cohesion. Colonel Chen stood, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of West Point tradition. We would be honored to share our knowledge, just as we look forward to learning from Federation expertise. After all, the core of our philosophy is continuous improvement through shared experience. As the delegation prepared to depart, Kithrix had one final observation. You have shown us that true military strength lies not in advanced technology or standardized protocols, but in the ability to adapt, think creatively, and maintain our values even in the face of uncertainty. He glanced out the window at a group of cadets helping each other through their morning exercises. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson humanity has to teach the galaxy, that our differences need not divide us, and that leadership is not about having every answer, but about having the wisdom to find solutions together. The crystal containing their report glowed with completed data as Kithrix handed it to Colonel Chen. Welcome to the Federation, Earth. We look forward to learning from each other.